Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert alongside Father Joe Grimaldi, and we would like to welcome you to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. The Father Joe podcast, proudly supported by our great friends at Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. Today, I want to talk to you about the Lincoln Driver Assist technology. It's called the Lincoln Copilot 360, and it's so unique, so comprehensive, that Lincoln has trademarked it. That's right. It's a collection of the most popular driver assist technologies designed, available anywhere. They help you keep at ease and driving safely. Now, it includes blind spot detection. Driving forward assistance, allow me to explain that a little bit. If you get too close to a car, you're going to get a beep, 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 beep. Lane on-course alert detection, which I love. For example, if you start to stray from your lane, you get that rumble strip feel you sometimes feel when you're in a construction zone. Rear view backing up, monitoring and assist, you love that. Parallel parking assist. Explore the 2019-2020 vehicles that offer Lincoln Copilot 360 by stopping by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield, home of the Star treatment. So another day, another A. Another day, another dollar. Why
a
should
dollar.
I?
Maybe it's a dollar.
You're from Canada? Oh, yeah, he's from Canada. He says dollar, and he also says things like he goes out to the church on occasion there, eh? Now, we don't want to lose any listeners, so let's not overdo it here. I wanted to ask you about something. At Mass, my wife and her brother went to a church here locally in Detroit on Saturday, and the Monsignor was talking about the fact that Sacred Heart Seminary, located here in the city of Detroit, they were celebrating 100 years. Mm-hmm. Sacred Heart Seminary is a beautiful, beautiful campus. I remember in grade school the fact that we actually took a tour of the school, thinking that if you do feel inclined to a vocation, this is where you would study, this is where you would live. And it was a little overwhelming, but it did sort of have that really special feel to it. It's 100 years old. When I think about the major Catholic universities, I think of Notre Dame, Georgetown, Boston, Villanova, Holy Cross, Catholic University.
Correct.
Is there a seminary connected inside of that? In other words, if I was inclined to be a priest, could I still go off to a college like that and enjoy all of the excitement of going to a Notre Dame, a Boston college at all, and still do theological studies and ultimately direct myself in the area of being a Catholic priest?
Well, there's a couple of things that you bring out that I think would have to be done with a certain amount of hesitation. Yes, I know at least two, and there's many, many more. If you look at Catholic University of America in Washington, there is a seminary called Theological College. It's separated by the main street, which is, by the way, Michigan Avenue in Washington, and it's a beautiful building in itself. Yes, Notre Dame, for example, is another one that has a seminary attached, and that would be for the Holy Cross Fathers. But they would study at Notre Dame. But to say that, an ordinary person who wants to be a priest can go to Notre Dame, we have to assume they can get in. They go to Notre Dame, and they want to be a priest. No, I think you either have to go to the seminary or to the university. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Well, here's a question. Can I go to Boston College, Notre Dame, Catholic University of America, and want my direction to be theological studies to become a priest and enjoy all of the excitement of going to a major university, football games, campus life? I'm not talking about the partying or any of that, Joe. I'm talking about my direction will probably be leaning towards continuing my Catholic education and possibly becoming a priest.
I see. Okay. you haven't really made a decision.
I
don't mean
I have
I
not
don't
made
mean
a
you,
decision,
yeah.
but maybe, just maybe, it's certainly something I'm going to look at as part of my overall consideration
Okay.
for what I would like to do the rest of my life. The way I typed it up was, do Catholic colleges have seminary studies built in any way, shape, or form? Okay, that was the idea that I was going with.
Okay.
In other words, if I go to the University of Notre Dame, 4 years, Notre Dame, get to have all the fun I ever wanted. And what if I played football and all of a sudden the announcer said, by the way, Ken plans on going to the seminary after he leaves the college program, although he would be drafted in the first round. So in other words, I can go to Notre Dame, graduate, basically lean on theological studies, and all of a sudden I could play college football, but I actually want to become a priest. I'd have to start the whole process over again? In other words, I'd have to go to a seminary after my 4-year undergraduate degree in theology? Can I use Notre Dame as the launching pad to think about my vocation?
Well, that's done on a regular basis, but the curriculum will not be the same. For example, you need a degree in philosophy also, so theology comes after the philosophy.
Uh-huh.
So if you have a preponderance of philosophical courses in college, it'll make it a little bit easier for you once you enter the seminary. But even there, you're going to have to supplement them with other courses. Then once you have that, you do your theology, which would be over and above that. What happens, and what you're saying is not unusual. There's a lot of people who are in college, Catholic colleges, or other colleges for that matter. All of a sudden they get the urge, but they find somebody that they could talk with. Maybe somebody who's attached to the seminary, and if it's a place like Notre Dame, they have the access to the seminary that's used for the Holy Cross Fathers. So they could pick somebody out there and say, listen, there's a possibility that I might be interested in priesthood. Could you help me along the way? And so he would become almost a spiritual director, if you want. And so he would guide him along the way. But the courses that the ordinary person takes in college are not equivalent to the ones that the seminarian would take.
I think that's a mistake, personally. I think they should be well-rounded in all aspects.
Oh, they do take those
education.
too, but they would have to have a preponderance. No, you're right. They have to have all that.
Yeah.
But there's a preponderance of philosophy, for example,
Yeah.
when you're in the minor seminary. There's a preponderance of theology, and it's not that you're not doing those courses. As a matter of fact, very often what the seminary suggests, you go to college first, and then we'll take you in.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It's good to know, because I always thought it was kind of like right out of high school.
Oh, no. See, they want you to have experience. See, that's another thing. In the old days, you had people entering religious life and the seminary very often at age 13. So people, after so many years, have decided that's not a good way of doing it. Because between the ages of 13 and 21, people develop in so many different ways that they need to have the experience of the outside world. I call it that, in quotes, the outside world.
Well,
And so, because once you're in the seminary, you're going to be guided into a particular way of study. So it's not going to be, yes, you'll go to the football games, you could even play intramural sports, but you're primarily attached to following a way that's going to lead to the seminary. And so that this is why I say you usually have a spiritual director that will lead you along the way.
yeah.
But you're right in the sense that they should have all those other courses, and they do, because they'll want them to come after the college.
Okay, so you're saying that, in fact, they would prefer someone to be really well-rounded. Let's say they went to a Boston college,
Right.
did a little tailgating, hung out with their buddies, got their degree, but still all of a sudden got that feeling that they wanted to continue in the area of becoming a Catholic priest. Then they enroll in, let's say, the Sacred Heart Seminary here in Detroit.
Right.
And they start their studies devoted completely and directly to the theological and pastoral studies all over again.
Yes, you make it sound like they start their studies all over again. It's not a repetition. It's different.
But they're already 22 years old,
That's
right?
okay.
All right. I know that's okay. So it's almost like becoming a doctor. You go to Notre Dame, you go to Boston College, you go to Villanova or Holy Cross.
Well, that's the difference between the Catholic priests and the people that get their ordination through the internet. Okay, so
Well.
no, but I'm being facetious. But
Yeah.
by the same token, the reality of the situation, I don't think people realize the studies involved in becoming a priest, and so that there's. I think they're rigorous studies. A lot is expected of them as far as study is concerned. It's not just going, in quotes, to college.
Right.
They're doing something more than that because there's a prayer life attached to it.
You don't think people realize what's involved in going to the seminary.
Well, I simply want to say that it's a way of life. There's a prayer life attached to it. What I mean by that, you have certain prayers that are said in common, and then you're guided along the way to do prayers in private. So there's a combination of that. You have set times for eating, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's always available there for the group. You almost live this monastic life. It's not supposed to be monastic because diocesan priests are not monastic. Most diocesan priests live alone. And so this is one of the complaints. What they're trying to do these days with priests is that if you have 4 or 5 different parishes nearby, maybe, I say maybe, it might be a good idea to have a house where they all live, and yet they work in those individual parishes. And this way, they're able to develop their community life. They're interchanging with other people. They're getting fresh ideas. So that's one of the things being looked at today as things change. I mean, the church has changed since I was a kid. I mean, since most of us were kids.
Well, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
So it's something that we have to deal with.
I'm talking about well-rounded, balanced guys, men, because, as you know, I'm an advocate for women becoming priests. You devote so much time to becoming a priest. I just want to make sure that those priests that we ordain have seen all aspects of life so that they know this is what they were meant to do.
I am very much in agreement with you, although I'm not an advocate for women priests, but not at this time.
Okay.
But anyway, so what I want to say is this, that this is why people are encouraging young men to finish college first and then go into the priesthood. But the other thing I want to mention, too, because of all that's happened in the last few years, more than last few years, there's a lot of psychological testing that takes place with the individual. I think these people have to be vetted, and they are.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how much they are vetted by the authorities of the seminary. So that,
and we know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but it's not just the sexual life that we're talking about, but also a well-balanced life. And this is what they're looking for. And so this is why there are these psychological tests that take place in the very beginning, and they continue along the lines as you progress in the seminary.
How do you find the young seminarians when you visit with them?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience. I have some experience with the young ones.
A lunch, a dinner, a gathering, whatever the case may be.
I find that things are going well. There aren't as many as we used to have. But basically, I find them to be well-balanced individuals. Maybe their personality is not the same as mine, but that would be boring if everybody had the same personality.
Sure would be, yeah.
So, no, I find them balanced as much as other human beings may be balanced. And I think that's because they are encouraged to do other things besides just theology and philosophy.
It starts in your heart. You feel like you've been chosen, called, whatever terminology you want to assign to it. You want to be a caregiver. You want to direct a flock. You want to do God's work, okay?
Yeah, but this is my opinion, but I'm going to express it anyway.
Yeah.
You You see a very beautiful woman in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I want to go out with her. I want to date her. I want to get to know her much more than I do now, and possibly marry her. I think that's the evolution of a relationship that takes place between a man and a woman. With religious life, you see priests, you see older priests, young priests, and so on. Wow, I like what they're doing. I really want to be doing that kind of thing. God does not come down and touch you on the shoulder and say, hey, Ken, you've got to be a priest. No, that's not the way it works. That's the romantic way. But it works more or less like you're attracted, just like you are to a woman. You're attracted to the work that you see these priests do. You start thinking, I think I would fit in there. I would want to do that. So you start investigating. You're not dating, but you're investigating.
Mm-hmm.
And you find, okay, what do I need to do? Or you'll find, that's not for me. So it's the same thing when you're dating somebody. After a while, she's not the one for me, and you break off. But, and maybe it is, and you continue.
Right.
So I think the progression of the vocation starts with a very natural attraction, and hopefully it becomes more spiritual with time.
See, I tend to be a little more romantic about it, that you do get that little tap on the shoulder.
There's a feeling, yes, there's a feeling that God is calling you. However, it's not clear in your mind. I think it becomes clear when you start investigating, what does the priest do? Where does he live?
Mm-hmm.
How does he function? What's his life like? And you start investigating because you have that interest. And it's a little bit of an interest, but it's an interest. Then you reach a point where, I don't think it's for me.
Right.
Or you reach a point where I'm going to pursue this. Just like you said, Ken, being in a diverse society, as you go to college, experimenting what goes on in a college life, whether it be Friday night parties or going to the games or playing intramural sports and so on. But again, it's the same idea. You say, well, but I still am interested in the priest. So you just pick out somebody you can talk with, someone who has some authority with the local seminary, and you say, what can I do? I'm here now, but I want to pursue.
A young man may look at the altar and see the priest and the vestments and the service, and that's the first inclination. Oh, I would like to do that. But they have no idea how much work is involved. It's just not the pomp and circumstance of the Mass and the words, the excitement that people get from looking up at Father Joe Grimaldi on the altar. There's a lot of work involved.
But once they start, you know that they begin to realize what is involved, and then they can make a decision as to...
And is that normally when the drop-off starts to happen?
I don't see it that much different than dating, huh?
Right.
There's a certain
It's a great analogy.
But a certain point where you just say, she's not for me. I don't want to see her anymore. Or, I'll just keep dating. We're fine. But then something happens, okay, and you break off. Or you continue to the point where you get married.
Going sideways. I'm going into the University of Notre Dame, Boston College, Holy Cross, Villanova, any one of the universities, thinking that at the end of this 4 years, I would like to be a priest.
As long as you have somebody that you can talk with along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, that vocation is not going to last. You've already indicated, I'm in a regular college.
Uh-huh.
I just want to do everything they do in the college. But yet I have this interest in priesthood. Well, make your interest known, that you could be guided along the way as you go along in your courses and so on and so forth.
Quick question for you about that. Can I have a relationship? By that I mean just friendly relationships with women as friends and go out and do things, and yet still continue that pathway to follow my vocation to become a priest.
Yeah, generally speaking, especially since you're in college, there's nothing wrong with that. Once you're in the seminary, I think you have to be careful.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, so once I'm in the seminary, I'm in.
There's a testing that goes on every year.
What is that testing?
Well, the testing is not a specific test, but you have a bunch of people evaluating you. I'm going to say 4 or 5 people among the professors, particularly in the first year. It's always good that if a person is going to be counseled out of the seminary, it's good that it happens after the first year of the seminary and not the last year of the seminary.
I agree with that.
Because people have put in a lot of time and effort and so on into that. So you would want to know as early as possible. So I would say this, probably the first year is the big number of people that are released. The second year, there might still be a few. Hopefully by the time it's the 3rd, 4th year, and 5th year, whatever it is, it's fewer and fewer and fewer.
Even the first-year student that's a great student may be filtered out?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, really? Based on what?
Well, his interests, his actions. Like, for example, if you have a guy that's basically sneaking out to go to the bars once a week, that's not a good thing.
How do they know that?
Oh, believe me, it's like the high school kids never knew that the principal knew things. And believe me, they talk. They all talk.
Okay.
Right? They do know. But there are people that evaluate. And then spiritual directors. See, once you're in the seminary, you're working with a spiritual director. And if you're honest with the spiritual director, you will try to let him know all of the stuff that you're experiencing. And he might counsel you in such a way, and say, you know what? You may rethink this whole idea of a vocation. Maybe it's better that you marry and have a family. You would be a good father, and so on and so forth.
Huh. Let's end with that, because I didn't realize there was such an intense filtration process.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I did expect them to have a vetting process, but I didn't know that there was a filtration process.
Well, maybe they're related.
Probably.
Yeah.
Again, you know me, and I love the word subjective. Sure. You're putting yourself out there in front of 4 or 5 individuals who have decided for me that I didn't make the cut.
Right.
That's something to consider.
It's painful.
Of course it is. I would be offended, personally.
Okay, but the thing is this. We have to put some trust. We're hoping that these 4 or 5 people are really in it for the glory of God.
Well, if it's down to 4 or 5, then...
No. But I mean the ones who are doing the evaluation.
Oh, I see, the vetting, yeah, okay.
That they're, people who are interested in doing God's work.
Right.
They're not interested because of differences in personality and so on. They have to be objective about it as much as they can. And I think if I'm a student, I have to trust that they are doing that. I'll get over it if I'm told that I have to leave. It's going to hurt. It's going to say, well, I put my heart and soul in this, and you're telling me I don't belong. There might be those feelings, but by the same token, I think we have to trust that these people that are guiding us are good people. They have the intention of the glory of God here. And so...
I love the expression, and we'll end with this. If I could only count the number of times I've heard, you'll get over it.
But how true it is.
Oh, I often say to myself, when I think there's a crisis on board Ken's life, and I usually think there's one almost every day, I always now remind myself, in 1 week, you won't even remember or care.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Oh, a lot.
With that, my friends, we look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast.
I look forward to it. Thank you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.